We took everybody, all 120 of us, we went down and we talked about the corner between the Federal Reserve Building, 218 Church Street, and the Sweet Pits Building, and how it was the origin of like placemaking, and when JWB started realizing it was more than just buildings, and the interconnectivity is what's going to make a city fabric better, having a bigger picture. Then we went down to like ground zero of where this Pearl Street district is going to be. We've talked about it a lot on the show. This like big development, $2 billion worth of just like urban core, mixed use, hospitality, residential, all these different things. And everybody got to stand in the middle of that. And now in 4 years, they're going to be not being able to recognize that. Really, really cool. And then we went to the periphery of it, right? Where the King Tut exhibit was, where the Van Gogh exhibit was. And we started talking about how, like, in order to do this, you have to take these long bets on bringing culture in early so people start getting used to it. And then it's not build it and they will come. It was like, let them come for a little bit, build it so they see it happening, and then they really come, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like long-term view of it that I thought really, really stood out. Anything you want to touch on real quick there?
Just, I love the stages of the evolution. We were able to tell the story of downtown through the lens of JWB, which was number one, we saw a big opportunity to make an impact for our community and our residents and to raise median incomes. And we saw a big opportunity for all of you because we have kind of built-in distribution network, let's call it, which is the 6,000 homes that we manage, all of the homes that we manage for you as investors. These are in neighborhoods right around downtown. And when you look at the fundamentals of how a revitalized downtown affects those neighborhoods right around, you start to see increased rents and you start to see increased home prices. So we were able to make that connection there. And we were able to make a connection for JWB, of course, long-term, making an impact, creating a legacy, being a pioneer here, and winning in the long run, which is important, of course. So that connection point was awesome. I just think the numbers of the economic impact were staggering of what Gateway Jacks and the Pearl Street District is going to mean. We'll talk more about this in coming shows, but $1.6 billion economic impact from this development that we're talking about, and over 2,800 jobs from this development that you all are a part of. JWB is a big part of it. You all are a part of it as well. So we are truly, again, this is why I'm just stepping into the shoes of how many lives we're changing here,
Yep.
right? This is the impact. This is the big picture. And I think that was the overall theme, especially as we did the downtown tour.
That was definitely our amigo Bill Shields' takeaway, because he wrote in the WhatsApp group, here's what I would say. JWB has created a vertically integrated investment flywheel of greatness that attracts exactly that which can be seen from their employees, investors, partners, and everyone in between. And what better place to do it than right here in Jacksonville, Florida, aka Duval. We are in the beginning stages of witnessing the creation of the greatest new metropolis in America, and it's a privilege to be a small part of it. I encourage anyone and everyone who is interested in changing their future and their family's future for the better to jump on board the JWB train.
There we go.
And Santorius, patron Santorius' wife,
Of course.
right? Along the lines of Bill's statement, learning about Gateway Jacks, seeing the restoration projects in motion, and then learning about the greater revitalization plans were both validating and energizing. We feel blessed to be in on the ground floor of the building/rebuilding of a great city. So shared by many. We then followed that up with the insider investor panel, where your partner, Alex, who, you could say was the tip of the spear for a lot of this stuff, brought together Brian Moll, the CEO of Gateway Jacks, and Lori Boyer, past star of the show as well, the head of the Downtown Investment Authority, to just kind of like put on display this like really rare synergy of like aligned incentives and like a long-term outlook between the public, private sector, and, developers that think differently, and the ability to recruit world-class talent here to Jacksonville. I thought was pretty cool.
I think it's really great. It's not just what you're hearing from me or from the community here. It's great to hear it about city officials, right? Lori is the head. She's the CEO of the Downtown Investment Authority. And it's great to hear it from lead developers who are not exactly JWB, right? Gateway is its own entity. JWB is a sponsor and investor in Gateway. But Brian's experience of having done exactly what we're talking about, having done it multiple times in advance, and him saying, I think one of his best comments was, I think Jacksonville is better suited for this type of economic development through revitalizing downtown than Tampa was.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
And Tampa's has been legendary.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So
yeah, that's a bold statement right there. So,
yeah,
and coming from the guy that did it, right?
100%.
So really, really interesting. And then we ended with we had lunch and we hurried into happy hour, but not before. We had a little keynote, right, GC, which we had a lot of fun putting together. And the crux of the keynote was this idea that if we're gonna do this, right, like if we're gonna get to the point where we are changing the dynamics of retirement in America, you had to build this team, but at the end of the day, it's not going to work without a better asset. You want to talk a little bit about your part of that keynote there?
Yeah, well,
before we bring the MVP.
And then I asked everybody who's fired up about downtown Jacksonville, and it was kind of like leading the question. Everybody's like, I'm so fired up, right? Alex came up to me afterwards. He's like, I've never seen 125 people more fired up about Jacksonville.
That's interesting.
And I mean, what I shared with everybody is I'm not surprised, right? Now that you see what we see, it's almost impossible not to be excited about this. But then I said, why did I start this conference by saying the best investment for you is boring old single family rental properties? I know all the stuff that I just shared with you. Why am I sitting here telling you that for everyday investors, the best investment is boring old single family rental properties? And what I shared with folks is like, listen, sometimes when we share this with everybody, the first question is, how can I invest in downtown? And I wanted to show people what investing in downtown really looks like right now. If you want to be an investor in the downtown fund for Gateway Jacks, it is a minimum investment of $1 million. Not only is it a huge capital investment, it's only allowed for accredited investors. So it's not for everybody. You have to have certain income and wealth requirements to even be allowed to do it. And then if you meet those and you want to invest $1 million, here's how the investment looks. You don't get a return on investment year 1 or year 2 or year 3 or year 5. This is for the long haul and bettering Jacksonville as well as doing well financially. So sure, you make some really nice returns, but that's only at the end. And so JWB has raised over $30 million in capital for people that are truly long on Jacksonville. And DLP Capital, our partner, has raised $200 million to do this. But I wanted to show people like that type of investment that I just talked about right there, whole lot of money, $1 million, not, only for accredited folks. You don't see a return on investment until the very end. Like that's not the best investment for everyday investors. And there's a better risk-adjusted way to take advantage of everything that's going on here in downtown Jacksonville. We know the numbers show that revitalized cities appreciate 27% more than the average US city over the last 10 years. So we know that this drives home price appreciation in those neighborhoods that are right around downtown. And so what I wanted to do with everybody and where I left everybody is like, you're able to get all of the benefits of the increased home price appreciation and rent price appreciation based on everything that you see happening downtown, but you don't have to take the risk to get there. And the way that you do that, the not your average way to do that, is to buy boring old single family rental properties, which go up indirectly for home prices and rents, but every single month they pay for themselves. They produce all across all 5 profit centers, and you get all of that benefit and you get all of that risk mitigation from day one, rather than speculating, which I love the downtown investment. I'm a part of that downtown investment, but I also know that that's not the right investment when we're thinking about how can you send your kids to college? How can you make sure you can donate to more charitable causes? How can you reduce your hours at work, right? That's not the type of investment for everyday investors. That's not the type of investment for our not your average investor community. And I think finally we connected the dots. What do you think?
I think so. I think you connected the dots. I'm going to start practicing saying it. Boring old single family rental properties. You have like a very particular cadence to say it. But GC, to me, they're not as boring because you pay off, like you're talking about this great asset, but when you pair this whole like downtown and the thing that's happening in downtown, I got up there and I started, explaining it as like, well, yeah, you might have thought the iPod was boring.
Right.
But if you had somebody inside of Apple that worked there, that after they released the iPod and it was clearly crushing, they gave you the inside track to know that the iPhone was coming and that the future of the world and communication was going to change forever and Apple was going to become the most valuable company in the world, and you got to buy it right after the iPod. That's the same as what we are telling people to, invest in boring old single family rental properties, boring old single family rental properties. And that's what has me super excited, this like insider information. And then you were pretty quick to tell everybody that would have been illegal if I would have told you.
You would have ended up in jail if you did what you just said in that fictitious story there and used insider information in the stock market world, because that is illegal. But the beautiful thing about real estate is we get to have conferences like this summit where not only do we get to share it, we get to take you on a tour and actually show it to you. We get to basically put this on a silver platter for you. And that's where this urgency and where I was sharing with folks, this is such a special time right now for you as an investor, because this model has worked for decades and decades and decades. And for friends of the show who have been watching for 4 years now, you've seen it work in a pandemic. You've seen it work through eviction moratoriums. You've seen it work through interest rates rising the most in 40 years. It still works. But now is this special time for you to get on the ground floor, just like I think Bill said, and Kelly said, and Denny has said, right? You get this opportunity to get on the ground floor and hitch your wagon to a revitalizing downtown. And we know the way that the economics work there. Right? If you are like any of the folks that came on the summit and you believe that 5 years from today, you're not going to remember what downtown Jacksonville looks like, just like 5 years after the iPhone came out, we didn't remember what it was like to live in a world without the iPhone.
I forgot all about Nokia.
And you want to profit from that legally. Well, you can do that through buying boring old single family rental properties here in Jacksonville with JWB. There you go.
Love it.